Okay, awesome. So I saw that 81% of people here are interested in learning about industry insight, and 75% people are interested in learning about career for international students in the US. Other includes like interviews, tips, and job search process are pretty high as well. So hopefully today's panel will help answer all the questions and concerns that you guys might have regarding this topic. So we'll start with a quick introductions of everyone, including name, position, company, and one interesting thing about yourself. I can start. Again, my name is Laura, and I'm currently a senior at Cornell University studying applied economics and management. I would be working at PwC in New York upon my graduation in technology consulting. And one interesting thing about myself is that I'm actually afraid of heights, but I actually love going to like roller coaster, gorge jumping, and the alike. So now for our panelists, can you introduce yourself and also briefly talk about why you decided to pursue this career path in terms of investment banking, advertising, or consulting? We can start with Chi Chang.
Oh, that's me, right? Hi, my name's Chang, Tang Chang, if that works. What did I have to talk about? What company I'm looking for? I'm a project leader in the Boston Consulting Group in Philadelphia. I don't specialize in anything, so I'm in a generalist position. A fun fact about myself. I love scuba diving. I've logged something like 1,000 hours scuba diving. And I'm very bummed that I haven't gone at all this year because of COVID. Let's see what else. How did I end up in this job? Consulting, especially general management consulting, is the ultimate career for someone who's indecisive, and I am very indecisive. I like to try everything, and so I'm still here trying everything.
Awesome. Anyone can start next.
I can go. So I'm Hoai. I'm a brand strategist at VML Y&R, which is a global creative agency. If you're not familiar with agency, you probably never heard of it, but it's like we have about 7,000 people in 82 locations and working for clients like Google, Salesforce, Target. So as an agency, you work with clients like brands that you're probably familiar with. One thing interesting about myself is, so my English name is Hana, spelled H-A-N-A, which means flower in Japanese. And my name at home is Bong, so kind of flower. So that's how I chose the name. And then why I decided to pursue this career path. I would say probably because I just love advertising and marketing. I think it's creative, it's fast changing. I love watching ads. I watch Super Bowl just to watch the ad, so it just comes from a point of interest. So that's why I decided to go for it.
Cool. I can go next. Can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So yeah, I'm Dao. I am now an investment banking associate at JP Morgan Chase in New York City. I just graduated from Yale from my MBA a couple of months ago, so I'm only a few months on a job, but happy to speak about my experience because I have spent the past 3 years in also investment banking at BDA Partners, which is an M&A advisor in New York and Ho Chi Minh City. So one interesting thing about me, my dad is a monk in Myanmar. So he's a full-time monk. I guess that's cool. And why I decided to pursue this career path, a couple of reasons, right? First, it's an incredibly fast-paced, very interesting deals. No deals are the same, so I get to work with different industry, different product, IPO, debt, M&A. So it's all very exciting for me. And lastly, it's working with incredibly smart people. You're not only working with smart people, also competing and serving clients who are extremely competent and smart. So I like that aspect and adding value to their lives as an advisor. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess I'm the last one. Yeah, so I'm Vân. I'm a manager of the financial accounting advisory practice at E&Y New York. I've been with the firm for over 3 years, and I started my career actually at PwC in the auditing group. One thing interesting about myself is I have been very interested in learning more about agricultural technology. So if anyone have share the same passion, let me know. We can explore that area a little bit more. Why I picked this career? I guess like back then, 6-7 years ago, when I was my senior in college, it just made sense when I go into this career, just because my accounting is always has a very strong demand, and I knew that if I get a job in accounting, is probably easier than any other job that I could get back then. And I've been in accounting ever since, never left.
All right, thank you, everyone. Now that we're already getting to know a little bit about our panelists, we'll delve into the first question. So what does a typical day look like for you? What are the typical responsibilities that you take on in your position? And anyone can start.
Sure, I can start. So I would say a typical day look like, so on a very high level perspective, my job is to help clients with brand positioning decisions. So that sounds super vague, but for example, like COVID happens, how should they change their messaging so they don't seem to be tone deaf? Or for example, legacy brands would come to us and wanting to know like how should they position their brand so they are one of the best tech and fun company among consumer eyes. So that would involve doing like customer research, like writing surveys to do primary research, conducting secondary research, running data analysis, probably more basic one compared to like data analyst job. Also work with creative team to create like actual campaigns. So let's say if you guys see campaign out there like Nike Just Do It, that would be an agency that probably worked on it. Also, I would say using a lot of PowerPoint and Excel, that's part of my job.
I can go. So consulting is a weird area to explain what a typical day looks like. And the reason is because every project is a little bit different. I often say that consulting is a bit like being a doctor to businesses. Sometimes they come to you when they have a problem, and sometimes they come to you because they want to live longer and think they're going to have a problem in 20 years. And so solving those problems are very different from each other. I would say that in general, there is definitely an analytics research component to the work, especially at the entry level. So it's an associate or consultant or a business analyst. So that would involve looking at the client data, figuring out what the insights are. Sometimes that involves desk research. There's definitely a lot of teamwork that's involved. So there's a lot of internal meetings for you to like try to figure out the problem. Like one of the problems that I was asked, I think my second case at BCG was, what is the audience measurement industry going to look like in 20 years? Let me be very clear, I can't do that by myself. So we have a lot of internal meetings to try to figure that out. And then you have a lot of client meetings as well. And these meetings could be anywhere between you're explaining the analysis that you're doing, trying to gauge whether or not that makes sense for them. What, like if there's a like if they look at it and are super surprised, like why are they surprised? Or if they look at it and they're not interested at all, and then you want to figure out why they're not interested, and you want to figure out something that will be helpful for them. So all of that could happen in one day, and the nature of the exact task is very different, but that would be what I say is the general categories of work.
I could go next. So like consulting, investment banking is another industry where it's impossible to describe what a typical day is. But on a high level, I guess I just explain a little bit about what we do as an investment banker. So I am on the coverage team. So I cover the media and communications company. So think AT&T, Time Warner, AT&T, Verizon, and Disney, Netflix, all of that companies. So either they come to us for two things. One is advice, and the other things are financing. So in terms of advice, if they want to buy or sell in other companies, they come to us and we'll give them, because we have so many years of experience in the industry, we're happy to help them execute that kind of transactions. And secondly, when they come to us for financing, either we're going to help them raise equity or we're going to help them raise debt, right? So for equity, either we're going to help them IPO. For a lot of startups, that's the common exits. And the other part is private placement in equity, so private transactions in equity. So that's equity. And the last one is debt. So the debt, you have the investment grade or high yield, and it's just pretty typical process. We're going to act as a middleman and raise capital from other like hedge funds or mutual funds, right? So understanding that, for me as an associate, we or analyst, right? We are responsible for a lot of the analyses. So the valuation, for example, pulling together a DCF, for example, to value a company, or looking at the comparable in the public market and trying to come up with the views of what your company is worth in today's market. If you go IPO, if it's in a public market, how much investors are willing to pay for your company. So we did a lot of that. And the other part is just thinking about high-level investment highlights of the company, thinking about the macro in the media and communications, for example, what are the trends of the industry, like cord cutting or subscribers or content. So we do a lot of research on that front as well. And the other part of my job is just turning comments. So in the MDs, my boss will come to me, like ask me to change some logos or aligning things, make things perfect. And that's the less, I see Trang is laughing here because we do a lot of that too. But yeah, just making things look nice, because it's client service at the end of the day and we need to look professional. So we spend a lot of time doing that as well. So hopefully it answers the question of what a typical day looks like.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a little bit to Thị Trang's comments on the consulting. So Thị Trang is doing like management consulting, when me at EY, we're doing operational consulting. So like basically, like when the clients have any operational problems or issues, they would come to us and we come in and we probably go through the same process as Thị Trang do for management consultant. We have meeting with them, understanding their issue, problems, such go back, figure out like a solution for them, and then meeting with them again. So it's just a lot of like client facing, like a lot of meeting all day long, and then at the end of the day, they make the client happy.
Awesome, thank you guys. So from what I heard, each career path, either be investment banking, advertising, or consulting, they have relatively different work schedule. But other than that, what do you think are the required knowledge or skills to be successful in your career path in particular and in business in general? We can start with Chị Hoài.
Sure. I would say I'll talk specifically about advertising because I think it's very different from everybody on here. But I would say, and this sounds very vague, but I think to be successful in advertising, first you have to have a perspective. I know that sounds super vague, but it's like, it's a creative field. In order for you to be good at it, you just have to read a lot of news, be very up to date with culture, read a lot of like Ad Age, like ad news. I subscribe to all of them and just understand what's going on, what's some of the trend, maybe download TikTok, just try it out, because if you're not culturally relevant, then you're not going to be able to make very creative campaigns that capture people's attention. So I think that's the first most important. And I would say second, this is more of a hard skill, is have the ability to do research, because you're going to have to do a lot of customer research, either quantitative, qualitative, to analyzing data, or just talking to people. I think that's very important skills, and you need to be able to do that to arrive at insights or help to inform any campaign that you're working on. So I'd say two things.
I can go next. So for my area, it's very like accounting driven, like it's very technical. So probably like the first very important skill is a technical skill, like the ability to like read or like understand like accounting guidance, for example. It's very important to like be good at like reading and writing. Also like communication is very important as well. Like being able to communicate up and down, making sure that people know your status is very important. And I guess the last thing is the attitude. Like if you're willing to work hard, and you're willing to learn, then you'll be successful in any career.
Yeah, that's really great advice, Steven. I mean, seriously, that was really good advice. You guys definitely should listen to that. I can be a bit more prescriptive about management consulting. This is the skills that would help you succeed in the company, but also the kind of things that we're looking for in candidates. So there are essentially 4 things that we're eternally looking for and eternally trying to do better as consultants. One is problem-solving skills, and that could be analytical. Well, you're not building any like Python model or anything, but like the ability to think about a problem logically is very important. As I said, remember thinking about like, how do you solve the problem of what an industry will look like in 20 years? It's like a very weird problem to solve, and you have to do it, and you have like 4 weeks. So that's one. We're always looking for that. 2 is teamwork. There's a ton of teamwork. Like that's it, that weird problem that I have, like that's not for one person to solve. That's like about 4. 3 to 4. And you all have to work together. You have to divide the work out. You have to break the problem out in a way that you can divide the work, and you have to like go out and do it, and you have to come back together. There's a lot of teamwork involved. The 3rd thing is communication, and this involves, could be client work, but it honestly could just be communication with your own team so that you can work together in an effective way. You do a lot of presentation and you lead a lot of workshops, so you kind of need to do that very well. And then the 4th is ability to run something to its end. And at BCG, it's called driving, and I think it's a weird word, but essentially if you're given a task and you don't get any supervision at all, you're welcome to reach out for help at any point. Like people are all here to help you, but you are deciding what you're gonna do today and tomorrow and the day after, and every day until this project ends. There are no one is going to come in and say, today, this is what you do. So that ability to see until the end of the project and execute is also extremely important. That's about it.
That's really good advice, and it's hard for me to go last because you guys mentioned everything that I wanted to, but I guess if I have to add something that is pertaining to investment banking, I think it might be the ability to learn something quickly and communicate it like concisely and clearly to either the client or your superior. Right? What I mean by that is banking is a very fast-paced world where you have to solve something. You may not have like weeks to do it. Like let's say it's the board meeting is next week. The client's going to call you Friday night, and you're going to have to come up with a full presentation to do it on Monday. So if you're new to the industry, you have to read up on everything possible in that very short amount of time and synthesize it and come up with a solution to the client. So to do that, I guess it comes with time when you learn to repetition. Just doing things like run a DCF gets pretty common after a few runs, but like think about how you interpret it, how the result of the DCF is understood in your specific industry. I think it's, and learn that in a quick amount of time it's extremely important as well. And after you do that, you have to communicate it with your senior. So for me, I have to explain that what I think about the result to my VP, and to be able to do that in a very short and concise manner and also clear is extremely important. So the way you learn that is just to participate in calls with your seniors, just listen to my boss just speaking to clients, and you learn that, and also make a conscious effort to practice that, not only to your superior, but also like, let's say you're explaining things to an analyst, try different ways to explain things to see what is the most effective way. And after that, learn through that repetition, and you'll be a better communicator in this job. So I'd say 2 things.
All right, thank you everyone. So to summarize, our panelists believe that some skills required to be successful in this field includes research, problem solving, communication, teamwork, and technical skills pertaining to the job. But most importantly, it's all about a positive attitude and a great will to learn new things. And so the previous two questions have obtained some insights into our speakers' career inspirations. Now we'll delve into the job search process and strategy. But before we continue, I would like to ask the attendees to type any questions you may have for our panelists in the chat, so our panelists can take a look at that before our official Q&A session in the end. So moving on, let's take it back to our panelists. One question that I think a lot of people here might have is that, what do you do that helps you stand out in the job search process? And, or in other terms, what makes a candidate stands out in terms of resume, technical skill, networking, interview skills, or any other skills?
I can go first. Since my job search was like 7-8 years ago, and it's probably very different now. But yeah, so I came from a very non-targeted school, and none of the big four would come to my school. None of the big company would come to my school. And what I did back then was I did a lot of LinkedIn search. I just reached out to, I can't remember how many people now, but I believe, I think back then, there was only 10% of the people that I reached out would get back to me. And that was really helpful with the whole process. But well, my I guess my experience was just being very persistent. I sent so many email out to my HR and then got a lot of rejection, and people would come back to me and tell me, hey, we're no longer looking for people, or our pipeline is already full. But I just keep sending email. I keep telling them that my school is very small. You guys don't come to my school, and how can I apply? And then eventually I heard back from PLC and EY for the first interview. So and then it just kind of went everything started from there. For the interview, I guess I did have to do a lot of mock interview with my with the career counselor at my school. I think I do at least 3 or 4 times a week for 2 months before the actual interview that I have with PLC. Yeah, and then after you got your first job, it will become easier for your second. So yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just want to echo what Yvonne was saying, because I went through the exact same process of networking, reaching out to people on LinkedIn. I also came from non-target back when I was recruiting when I was an undergrad. And also I went through another recruiting season when I was in my MBA, but the two very similarities, I guess, is networking and the importance of getting the skill set of getting to talk to people interested in learning about their experience and learning from their wisdom, I'd say. So yeah, back in college, I would have this Excel file of all the people I reached out to. I think it's 125 or something like that. Again, 10% would reach, that number is actually very accurate. Around 10% of people you reach out to will get back to me. So I guess I sent out around 1,000 emails, I guess. After that, you talk to people, and then the key is to follow up. So after a few weeks, if they are too busy, just follow up with them. Most of the time when kids reach out to me at this moment, I'd be too busy to respond. So after, if they reach out to me again, I'll be more than happy to talk to them if I'm less busy, right? So to follow up, be persistent. Don't be discouraged if you're not seeing any response, if you haven't seen any progress. So all of that experience applied to when I was at Yale too. So I have to go to New York 2-3 times a week to do coffee chats with people. So every single week for 10 weeks, I would jump on a train, be in New York, and go back 2-3 times. And that kind of that kind of connections I build with people actually allows me to get jobs. It's more streamlined, it's more structured in a way that people will introduce bankers to you and you just go out and meet with them. It's much easier to do that versus reaching out to people on LinkedIn, but still you need to do the work of getting to talk to them, be a sociable, be a nice person, and trying to learn from them as much as possible. So networking is huge. And I guess the last one, I guess, is technical. Now, banking technical is not something it's hard to learn. You just need to go through a couple of financial modeling exercise and reach out to me if you want the resources on that. I'd be happy to help.
So I just wanted to go off what both of you just said. I also went to a non-target school. I went to a school, very small liberal arts school in Indiana. So literally in the middle of nowhere. We didn't really have a career fair. If we did, it would be like all company you never heard of. So one of my sort of like, I think you guys said it all. I guess one ad I would say is to create opportunity for yourself. Like for example, in advertising, your resume is more important than your technical skills because it's more of a subjective field. Like, you know, they can't really test if you're good at marketing or not. They're more looking for your personality, if you're a culture fit. So let's say my school didn't have marketing advertising classes and there's no way really for me to show that I know marketing or I know advertising. So I like founded an advertising club and I like found speaker to go to my club so I can talk to recruiter. You know what, like my school didn't have it, but I found a club to make it happen. So I'm just saying, like, if you go to a small school or in a school that's non-target, just try to create opportunity for yourself because that's a way for you to compete with other people, especially if you want to find a job in like a big city. It's more competitive. And I guess the second thing I would say in terms of interviewing, and this is specifically for marketing, I know it's different for all the other fields, but when you're interviewing, please try to turn the interview into a conversation. I think that's the key of success. If they ask you a question, try to ask them back and make it like a friendly conversation. I've noticed like whenever I could make that happen, I'll get the job. So just try to make it friendly because in advertising, people are very like fun, creative people, and they're looking for a person they want to work with. It's more of a laid back working culture, I would say. So if you're looking for a job marketing, just try to make it a friendly conversation. So that's all I have.
Yeah, I think everybody has said all of the important stuff. So I'm not going to bother. I think the networking piece is extremely important. My first job out of college was at a startup, and I networked until I essentially talked to the founder of the company, which is how I ended up there. And consulting, getting a job in consulting is like, so getting a job in consulting has got like the getting the interview part, and then there's the getting the job part. Getting the interview part is like 80% networking. Like, they will read your resume. It is important. If you have good scores and you have good accomplishment, that's very important. If you don't have any of that, it will be impossible. But like 80% of it is networking because we have so many applications that anyone that has a referral or a note in their file that says we talked to this person, they're interested and they are friendly, like, is basically what you need. And then the interviewing part is actually there's only one thing that if I'm going to start talking about case interview, it will take forever, so I'm not going to. But the one thing I can say about the interview part is that everything else that you did before it does not matter at all. This is my second year interviewing for BCG, and I can tell you this for a fact, which is I don't read your resume before I interview you. I have no idea who you are, and I am not going to call all of the people that you have talked to and like get like a feel for you. I am seriously going to sit down with you for 45 minutes, and at the end of it, like literally in the 5 minutes right after the call, I'm going to give you a score, and that score is how you pass the interview, and that's it. So like, don't, like, once you get the interview, don't feel weird about yourself, or like if you're not from a target school, like none of that matters, because they don't care and they don't read your resume and they don't know anyone you talk to. So that's the one thing I can say about the interview process that is specific to consulting.
Thank you, Chang, for the perspective from a recruiter perspective, and our other like panelists on some great advice on how to network, how to write a good resume, how to give a good impression during interview, as well as some tips on practicing technical skills. I guess the next questions I would have for our panelists today is if you have any advice on job search during COVID-19 challenges.
Yeah, this is tricky because none of us is looking for a job at this particular time. I do know a lot of people who are recruiting, and I guess hiring people during this process. I think if there are two things that I could say, I think it's like you have to do even more networking. In some ways, actually a little bit easier because people are not stuck at work all the time. And people expect to have to do more networking virtually, which actually in some ways like to your benefit. They're not expecting to meet you in person, so that's easy. You can network with a lot of people. And the other thing is honestly just patience. And yeah, like have a really good attitude about waiting for people to respond. I used to have a spreadsheet where like I track every conversation I have with people and when it was last, and I like set a note so that I know the next time I should be talking to them. So be systematic, be patient. People all have Zoom fatigue. So be cheerful when you're talking to them. Honestly, that's like the only thing. If I get on a call and the person I'm talking to is really tense and is interviewing me, I'm like already stressed. And this is like my 15th call today. So that's, I guess, the only thing that I really have in mind.
Yes, I was just gonna add, like, be persistent is the only thing that I can give you guys. Yeah, you just have to do what you have to do. Keep doing it if you know that is something that you want, and it will get to you. Like you get it eventually. Be persistent.
That's great advice. And also, especially during COVID, I would add be flexible as well. Because right now the job market is not doing so hot. So you might want to, so I'm like, for background, I'm mentoring a kid who want to get into investment banking, for example, and their JPM's not sponsoring international students this year. So they have been sponsoring for the past, I don't know how many years, but this year they don't. So it's obviously not ideal, but I advise him to go to like Singapore. So banks in Singapore are still sponsoring. They're still taking new people, and it'll be a great opportunity for him to intern there and then come back here and recruit for full time, right? So there are multiple ways to get to where you want to be. So for me, for example, I wanted to do banking in New York, and it took me 5 years to get to where I am today through an MBA, and then I have to go back to Vietnam. It's not a straightforward path, but if you're, like Van said, persistent about where you wanted to go and your dream, you'll find ways to make it happen, and also needs to be flexible in that journey.
I don't think I have anything to add. I guess you guys said it all. My only thing is I would say people are more empathetic at this time. Like when people are reaching out to me, I'm more willing to help than normal because I know such a stressful times, challenging. I think the same for recruiter for everybody else. So just reach out, and more than ever, people are willing to help because it's such a difficult time and people know it. So that's the only thing I have.
Thank you, everyone. So to summarize, it's important to be systematic, be patient, be flexible, and be persistent in job search, especially during this crazy COVID time. Like Undoubted said, there are multiple ways to get there to where you want, either try out to recruit in a different country or maybe go to grad school if that's a better option for you. And so my last questions for the panelists before we move on to the Q&A session is that how do you find a company that would sponsor international students? Because I know a lot of people are struggling with this, particularly in the US.
Yeah, I think I can start. I mean, this is not easy, right? And so there are a few things that you can do. Well, actually, before I start there, a little PSA, BCG is still sponsoring. My best friend is at McKinsey. I am certain they are also still sponsoring. I cannot speak for any other firms. It is a much tougher place to be, not just because of COVID, but the current immigration environment is difficult. That said, a lot of firms are still holding on to their traditional policy. BCG is, they're sponsoring H-1B. If you don't get it, they will transfer you to international office and they will sponsor your green card after 12 months. So that is still the policy. It is, as I say, still difficult. I know the lawyers are working very hard. Anyway, so the couple of things that you can do is, one, I always check the H-1B database. Like if a company has sponsored in the past, there is better chance that they're sponsoring now. The second thing is honestly just like call a recruiter and ask. Most of the large companies have very defined policies and they would just tell you, so that you can eliminate that. I am sure there is I swear I saw it, there's like a shared spreadsheet floating around the internet somewhere where people will put in like what their current status, like what their company is doing in terms of sponsorship. Like I am sure if you Google it, you will find it. I saw it. The other thing is, the third thing that I wanted to say is, even when there is a policy, a few smaller firms would be willing to reconsider for specific circumstances. 5 years ago, again, different time, one of my really good friends went to work for Parthenon, and at this point, they were not E-verified. And it was in her year that it was her and like 2 other associates that needed the company to be E-verified that year, and they just did it. So there is, the key thing is like to get the job, and then you can try to convince them or negotiate otherwise. But other than that, there's not a ton of things that you can really do to change the environment that we live in, unfortunately.
I totally agree with what you said. I think I'm just really echoing. The first thing is check H-1B database. That's what I do, but it's not guaranteed. People, like Dao said, like, his company has been sponsoring in the past, they're not doing it anymore. But I guess it's a good way to do. Something that I've did, and I think similar to your friend scenario, my first company that I worked for and sponsored me H-1B, I was the first person that I ever sponsored. So it does happen. In advertising, it's very rare that people do it. So my way that I've been doing it, and you guys can do it or not, but what I normally do is just try to pass a recruiter around. And then if you can convince a team to really like you, they'll fight for you. And I know that's really hard. Sometimes I have walked away from like a final interview just because I couldn't sponsor my visa, but at least I got to practice my interview. And then I still get a chance to maybe get the sponsorship. So that's how I have been doing it, because people don't sponsor in marketing advertising, especially for entry-level jobs. So that's something you guys can do. Try to get to a recruiter and just make the team really, really like you. So that's one tip that I've been doing.
Oh gosh, talking about H-1B, I just got my H-1B this year, and it's my 3rd time trying. So very glad that I did that, but also wanted to say that it's extremely difficult in this environment for us international students. So for me, what I did was just do a lot of research on. So I know I want to do banking, so just research on which banks sponsor, and then target all of my efforts on those banks. So for example, some banks do not, like Citi, or I don't want to name names because I don't know the latest, but just focus on those who are sponsoring and put all of your eggs in that kind of basket. So for me, in targeting larger firms, I think you have a better chance of getting sponsored because they have more resources, they have the lawyers ready, and if they have the policy in place, then they could do it for you. But also I can see the argument that the smaller firms can be more flexible if you can prove to themselves that you're a value add to their team. So maybe try it out, the largest of the large firm and also the smaller firms, and see where it goes.
Congrats that on the H-1B. I think everyone covered it all. I don't really have anything else to add in my whole process when 7-8 years ago. So, but I guess for me back then, the strategy was going with the bigger company, because I knew that for Big Four back then they were still sponsoring. But I think now only EY and Deloitte are the 2 that's still sponsoring, but the other 2, I don't think they sponsor anymore. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So our panelists have shared some ways to find companies that would sponsor for international students. You can either look at H-1B database to see whether a company sponsored in the past or started out from a small firms and then transition to bigger ones later on, or talk to people from the company to find out. And so from my own perspective as a student, what I did was actually to look at my school Handshake, which is a website that many schools have for recruiter and students to connect. And you can see which company sponsors on the website, or I would just go to the company's events at my school and then ask them in person or through email. And so that's all the questions I have for the panelists today. Now we're gonna move on to the Q&A questions for the last 15 minutes. So I asked people to send out some questions that they have in the chat, and one question would be, what would be some of your advices to make yourself stand out when you're brand new to the company?
I can start if nobody wants to go first. Something that I have done, and I've worked at 3 different companies, is I try to grab coffee one-on-one with people when I first start, with like my mentor or like my manager, people on the team. I think getting the one-on-one connection is super helpful, just so like you can have for personal relationship. I think it's always helped. So I try to do that like during my first few weeks. Just setting one like 30 minutes coffee break, and everybody is super willing to do it. So that's what I have been doing. And I guess in the first few weeks, just ask a lot of questions. One thing I think is in your first few months, you have room to ask as many questions as you can. You can ask very silly questions, then later on, you'll be more reluctant to ask because you feel at that point you should know better. I mean, yes, you still can ask questions, but at the beginning, everyone is willing to help you. So just ask as many as you can, be proactive, and just leave a good impression, I think, is what I've
done. In my case, I think, well, it's been a long time for me, but from now I'm a manager, so I can speak from a manager perspective. So if someone just started on the job, and I would be very impressed, or I think I'm looking for someone who like would be more like vocal in meetings. Like you don't have to like tell, like, well, at least like you can provide the perspective or like ask questions. If you're sitting in a meeting and if you don't talk at all, then no one gonna know that you are there, or like even know that if you are thinking, or like if you're working. So if you can try to like be like more visible in meetings, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's great advice. And just want to synthesize what Hannah and Vân says about be visible. And one of the way you can be visible is to grab coffee with them, right? So for me, my strategy when I just started actually a couple of months ago was to do a good job on the things that like the managing director asked me to do, because I know he's busy. If I ask him for coffee, I don't think he would be willing to. But my strategy is to do a good job first, and after he knows that I did a good job and I reached out to him, say, hey, I love working on this project with you. I hope I did a good job. And why don't you, can we grab a 30 minutes coffee? And it will, it'll show that you're visible. I'm not senior enough in my field to speak up in meeting, unfortunately. So that's the way I have to find ways to make myself visible to the seniors. Not only seniors, but also grab coffees with your analysts, with somebody who's you're managing as well. So.
Yeah, I think yeah, I just want to add one more thing to that. I think he gave a very good advice on doing a really good job. So I totally agree that like your quality work will speak through itself. Like people know about you if you like really put your time and your effort into doing like creating a quality job.
Thank you, guys. So another question that the attendees have is, do you know what are the differences between a small company and a large company culture? How can I know which one is going to be a better fit for me?
All right, I can try it. And I am trying because I first worked for a company with 4 people in it, and now I work for a company with 15,000. So I would say that there is some differences in that the small company, in the first day, you will probably know everybody's names and parents and pets and neighbors and literally everything else, and not so much in a big company. You expect more processes, more bureaucracy in a bigger firm. There would be an HR department as opposed to, the lady that I talk to get my paperwork done. At my startup, sometimes I do my own paperwork. But you also would expect more resources out of a bigger firm. So like BCG has a research department. So like if I am on a new case and I don't know anything, I'll just call them and they will send me a bunch of stuff, which does not happen when I worked at a startup. So there are some differences there, but I'm going to be honest, that doesn't actually determine the company's culture all that well. Even at the same size, companies are very different from each other. Like the startup that I work with are very different than like other startups that I've seen or I know about. So it's not so much the size, it's really very much a company by company specific. I would highly encourage that you talk to people in the firm and get a feel for, one, their personality and other people's personality in the firm, and two, how they interact with each other. And obviously you don't like call them and ask them those questions, like, tell me about how you interact with each other, because that's weird. But if you imagine working in a company, what are some of the things that you would do, or what are some of the things that you would want to know? So like if I were to imagine working in an office, I would want to know if they hang out after work. So like I would ask about that kind of thing. Or I would probably want to know like the size of team that they tend to work in, like that's reasonable. I would want to know how often people talk to their managers, or like what is the or like if you don't want to ask that question because it's a little strange, you can ask people to just talk about how they interact with their colleagues, or like what is the typical case. That's what I get asked a lot, is what is the typical project. Because what you want to know is how do people interact with their managers, for example. It's like something I would want to know. So you essentially just have a casual conversation about their work and you figure out how people interact, and that's how you figure out what the office culture is. Because they're really different. You can't actually guess. I have guessed and I have been wrong many times. So I would encourage talking, a lot of talking.
I can add to that as well. I've also worked at a small company and a big company. I would say it's up to you, like depending on what you're looking for. I would say, for example, I think Chang said it, but big company, there's more structure to it. I think it's good for fresh graduates because it gives you good habits. So how to take notes, how to write emails, how to do presentation. You think those things are simple, but they teach you at big corporations. And then more infrastructure, more resources. There's more department, like she said, like there's a research team where you reach out to. Versus smaller company, I think you can see your impact more clearly. You can take on more responsibility, and you probably can take on roles that you're not qualified for. So that's pretty cool, right? Like you may be not a senior person, but you can take on responsibility that are normally a senior person would do. So I guess depending on your personality, if you up for challenges and you want to do that, then go for a small company. But again, to what Chang said, like even big company, they also may have a startup culture and vice versa. So just ask and see what you like better, I would say.
Yeah, I would say culture is a misnomer. It's just a combination of personalities in person. So nothing to add there. Just talk to people and you'll learn about the culture of the company, as Chang said. So.
Thank you, Hua, Chang, and Dao for some great advice. Another question we had is, would you recommend taking MOOCs to gain hard skills? In that analytical skills, Python, and other hard skills? How do hiring managers view those online courses?
All right, let's see. Okay, so there are not a ton of MOOCs that are relevant to consulting, because a lot of MOOC, like the really good ones, are technical in nature. So I would say two things. One, from a recruiter, from a consulting firm. They're okay, they're good. We like to see passion. We like to see that people are interested in things enough to do something about it. But honestly, they're kind of becoming table stakes. Like we see a lot of them and a lot of people have them, and completing them is not difficult. Or at least, you know, as more people complete them, they don't seem as difficult. So we appreciate things that are more accomplishment in nature. Like, let's say you took a couple of Python classes, that's awesome. But if you put in your resume that you like built something that has some sort of use, somebody will want to talk to you about it. I have occasionally, like very rarely, I've like noticed people's resume, and like some of it would have been like somebody wrote a speech recognition algorithm specifically to help people with a speech problem of some kind, to like help them correct their speech. That's cool. I'm totally going to ask you about that in your resume, in your interview. And I don't usually read resumes, right? So an accomplishment is more important than the completion of a course. So that's like one thing that I would say. The other thing is, the only other thing that I would say is there are some like online credential classes that I've seen pop up in application. Like I think like HBX has got like a online course that you can take and actually complete and get a grade. So like I've seen that on people who have a mostly technical background and want to show that they have an interest in business. I have seen that. But again, like we value accomplishment more than the class, if that means anything.
Thank you, Teaching. Someone else also asked, I have a degree in BBA and I'm earning my MBA in a small school. Is there any chances to get H-1B in this field?
I guess this question is not very clear. Did he mean that he wants to get an MBA? Well, let's get a H-1B in MBA field. So, I guess like now he got an MBA and he went into investment banking and he got sponsored and he get H-1B. So it's possible, right? And with an MBA, you can go with different track and different fields. I would say like, of course it's possible. You just have to put in the work to get it.
Okay. Yeah, and Dao, do you have anything to add on that?
No, nothing to add.
Oh.
It's
okay. All right. I guess there's another questions, but I don't know if any of our panelists could answer. Is there any legal way for a tech PhD students to start a company in the US after graduation? I'm not sure if any of you know the answer to this.
I don't know the answers to this, but I do want to say the other day I read about this organization. Pretty sure they're called Unshackle Foundation, and they are a VC that specialize in helping immigrants who want to start a company. So you should definitely look them up. I think they're called Unshackle, UNSHACKL Venture. So look them up. They specialize in helping people on H-1B, on TN, or whichever Canadians visa that's on. So I think they would know the answer better than us.
Yeah, I can tell you like one snippet that I know from a friend of mine who's a PhD who works for a startup. I think he's one of the founders, but I also think the other founders are American. I think a startup absolutely can sponsor an H-1B. I mean, honestly, as any company, they can sponsor an H-1B. The biggest issue with a startup, and I know this because somebody had tried to sponsor my H-1B before when I worked for the startup, is the ability to pay. So if the startup has like steady revenue, that they can prove that they can pay you the salary that they are submitting in their labor application, then yes, that would be possible. That is the hardest thing with startups, is if you don't have funding, for example, you can't prove that you can pay yourself the salary that you need to pay yourself in order to pass the certification process. So that's the only thing I really know, but like definitely look up the place that Chi-Huai said, because I think that's more accurate.
I just pasted in their chat, so if anybody is interested, I saw them. I think they're pretty legit, so check them out.
And also the administration has just changed the H-1B law like 3 days ago. So you should look up on that. There's some, like the salary you get paid is, you know, they have a different threshold now. So I encourage people to read up on that.
Thank you. Another questions that people have, I think we kind of answered, the panelists kind of answered them already, but how can I adapt to US corporate culture better after I land my job?
I think that's an entire, like, you can have an entire panel just about that. That's a lot. Yeah, you need like a whole presentation. There's a lot of differences in American corporate culture. I think you need like a lot of learning. I can say a couple of things. I think one learning for me is that companies are very different from each other. I have briefly interned and hear from a lot of my friends who work in companies where they don't talk to their manager as much, or like their boss's boss. I can't go like one project without talking to the senior partner on my team like several times a week, because they would just call my cell phone. Weird. So companies are very different from each other. That's like one thing that I learned, which I didn't expect. People are like, the structure a lot flatter here in companies that I've seen. So there's a lot more expectation that you interact with people with authority and being able to sort of hold your own in front of it. Like have a strong opinion is not weird. So there's a lot. Like I haven't thought about this clearly enough to like have a list, but this is a meaty topic. I'm not sure we can answer it in 30 seconds for you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I agree. I would say if you're in advertising, I don't know, watch The Bachelor, your guy, watch sports, watch Netflix show. That's a good way to incorporate the culture so you can talk to your colleague. Just kidding, but honestly, it's such a huge topic. And every company culture is different. Like maybe your company, they love to go out for happy hours and go for it. So really depend on the company you're working for, and you when you start working, you start noticing, and you just get it, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that was really helpful. I just wanted to add another thing. So there's gonna be a lot of people in your company, and people are very different, and you don't have to like them all, or they don't have to like you. Like not all of them have to like you, right? So I guess like you should just like try to navigate throughout the company, try to find like someone that you feel like who share the same value, or like be a good mentor for you, or a good buddy, and then hang out with a couple of people that who share the same value. That you don't have to change yourself to be like to be liked by other people in the company. Yes.
Thank you everyone for the answer. I saw that we have some other questions that people have here in the Q&A. However, we're running out of time, so unfortunately we can't answer all of them. But if you have any specific questions for any of our panelists, I think you can email them. What do you guys think? Would you prefer to be contacted through email or anything?
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah.
Email works.
Yeah.
Email,
okay.
LinkedIn.
I'm not sure if the conference has sent out the email of the panelists to the attendees, but if not, then we can do that after this, so people could have the contacts and like email them if they have any other specific questions. Before we leave, I want to ask the panelists one last question. What's one thing you would want our attendees to take away from today's panel?
I go first. So as Winston Churchill says, never, ever, ever, ever give up.
I could go next. Yeah, that one saying, well, I don't know where I got it from, but I have lived with that saying. Basically, if you try, your chance of successful is more than 0. But if you don't try, it's definitely 0. So keep trying.
Yeah, I'm sensing a persistent theme here, because what I would say is persistently, consistently, and constantly advocate for yourself. So that's the only thing no one else can do for you.
I agree. I was going to say the same thing, but since you have already said it, I'm going to pick something else. I would say if you're a college student, don't forget to enjoy your college. I think most of the time you're so stressed out about finding your jobs, doing all these internships, and you're going to be working for the rest of your life. Like, trust me, like you would have enough working. So if you have the opportunity to really hang out with your friends, I don't know, do something fun, explore yourself, go traveling, please do it, because once you start working, it's really, you only have like, I don't know, 3 weeks of vacation. So just enjoy your life, enjoy your college. So you're a senior, just, you're gonna get a job. I know it, because if you dial on this, you're probably motivated enough to listen to all these panels talking. So just don't forget to focus on yourself. That's what I would say.
All right, I think that's it for our panels today. Thank you all panelists, Chị Hoài, Chị Vân, Chị Chang, and then Dao, for making it today and sharing very insightful information to the audience. So also thank you to organizing team for making this happen. So I guess that's it for today, and I hope you guys have a great weekend ahead. No, I think it's a great week ahead.
Yes,
Thank
I want to add a little bit because we won't be sending speakers' email out to participants just for privacy purposes. So if speakers are comfortable, they can paste their LinkedIn or their email in this chat. And yeah, thank you very much for coming to this panel.
Thank you for organizing.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for moderating and thanks for organizing.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.